Effect now, sir.
Officer, I'm at a public range. Calm, please.
Those weapons look illegal. Show permits immediately now.
I'm Marcus Reed, federal ATF agent on duty.
I don't care. You're detained until I decide.
My credentials are valid. Supervisor can confirm instantly.
Drop the bag and spread out your hands.
Negative. Lawful carry. Request a sergeant right now.
Last warning. Comply or you're going in cuffs.
Badge 217.
The recording you just watched captured everything, every command, every pause, every second of a confrontation that spiraled out of control. What it didn't capture, at least not immediately, was the magnitude of the mistake unfolding in real time. Because standing just feet away from that officer was a man he had absolutely no idea about. No clue who he was questioning, no awareness of the credentials calmly sitting in that range bag, and no understanding of how quickly this situation was about to turn against him. Instead of panic, there was composure. Instead of resistance, there was restraint. While most people would have raised their voice or begged for mercy, this man did neither. He followed procedure, spoke carefully, and let the camera do the talking. Marcus Reed wasn't just another civilian at a shooting range. He was a federally sworn ATF agent, a firearms enforcement specialist, a court-certified expert witness, and a man with over 2 decades inside federal law enforcement. And by the time this body cam footage finished circulating, that officer's decision would cost taxpayers $4.5 million and end a career forever. Before we dive deeper, I need you to do something right now. Drop a comment and tell me yes or no, should this officer have been fired immediately? If you care about accountability, hit subscribe, because this story gets more intense, more shocking, and far more disturbing as it unfolds. You do not want to miss what happens next. Marcus Reed was never someone who expected special treatment. At 41 years old, Reed had already spent 19 years in federal service, most of them with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. He started his career straight out of college, working firearms trafficking cases that spanned multiple states. Over nearly 2 decades, he participated in more than 1,200 investigations, testified in federal court over 80 times, and helped dismantle several interstate gun-running operations. He was a certified firearms examiner, an instructor at the federal law enforcement training centers, and a consultant frequently requested by U.S. attorneys preparing complex weapons cases. His evaluations had been cited in appellate rulings. His testimony had survived cross-examination in some of the most aggressive federal courtrooms in the country. But colleagues knew him less for his resume and more for his demeanor. Reed was known as methodical, patient, and unflappable. Supervisors described him as the calmest guy in the room, even during high-risk operations. Younger agents often shadowed him because he explained procedures slowly and never cut corners. Outside of work, Marcus was private. He trained regularly at public ranges, paid for his own lane time, and never identified himself unless required. He believed credibility meant following the same rules as everyone else. That Saturday afternoon was no different. He loaded his gear, drove his silver Toyota 4Runner, and headed to the range, expecting nothing more than routine practice. The range sat just outside the city limits, a wide-open stretch of gravel lanes and concrete firing points under a cloudless sky. The temperature hovered in the low 90s, heat radiating off parked vehicles and the steel targets downrange. Marcus arrived shortly after 4 Time Monitor signed in at the kiosk and parked near the outer fence line. He unloaded his range bag, carefully rifle case, ammunition, ear protection moving with the same deliberate pace he always did. At the same time, Officer Daniel Kowalski was finishing a routine patrol nearby. 38 years old, 11 years on the force, Kowalski had built a reputation as proactive, aggressive, and unwilling to back down once he committed to a decision. That afternoon, dispatch relayed a vague call. Man with multiple firearms acting suspicious at public range. Kowalski didn't ask follow-up questions. He didn't verify descriptions. He didn't consider that a shooting range, by definition, involved firearms. Instead, he drove straight in, parked behind Marcus's vehicle, and activated his body cam. From the moment he stepped out of the cruiser, his posture was rigid, shoulders squared, hand hovering near his holster. His eyes locked onto Marcus's gear before a single word was exchanged. When Kowalski finally spoke, his voice carried authority but also assumption. "Hands off the rifle," he ordered. Marcus turned calmly, palms open, and responded evenly. That was the first exchange, and it set everything else in motion. "Officer Kowalski, step back from the weapons now and follow my commands." Marcus complied, stepping back, hands visible. Inside his mind, years of legal training clicked into place. Terry v. Ohio. Reasonable suspicion. Scope of detention. He knew exactly what the officer could and could not lawfully demand. Marcus Reed. Officer, can you explain what I'm being detained for? Kowalski's jaw tightened. Questions weren't compliance. Officer Kowalski, I don't need to explain anything yet. Those firearms appear illegal. From behind the firing line, other patrons began to glance over. One man subtly lifted his phone. Marcus Reed, respectfully, they're lawful and I can provide credentials. Officer Kowalski, I said permits. Now. Reed reached slowly for his range bag, narrating each movement. Marcus Reed, I'm a federal ATF agent. Badge and credentials are inside. That should have ended it. Instead, Kowalski doubled down. Officer Kowalski, I don't care who you claim to be. That dismissal was pivotal. Legally, it mattered. Psychologically, it was everything. Kowalski had crossed from investigation into ego preservation. Reed cited Arizona v. Johnson, calmly reminding the officer of limits on prolonged detention. Kowalski responded with threats of arrest. Voices rose. Phones were now clearly recording. Officer Kowalski, last chance, drop the bag or you're going in cuffs. Marcus Reed, you're escalating unlawfully. I'm requesting a supervisor. That was the moment Kowalski made his decision, and the moment this case became inevitable. The cuffs snapped shut with a sharp metallic click. Marcus noted the time, the pressure, the positioning. Even as the plastic back seat pressed against his wrist, he focused on documentation, on memory, on procedure. The patrol car smelled of vinyl and disinfectant. The ride to the station passed in silence, broken only by radio chatter and the hum of tires on asphalt. At booking, a younger officer took Marcus's credentials and froze. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't panic. He simply stood up and walked quickly toward the supervisor's office. Within minutes, whispers traveled up the chain. A lieutenant, then a watch commander, then a phone call that left the room silent. Orders came fast. Remove the cuffs. Release him immediately. No apology, just urgency. Marcus gathered his belongings, nodded once, and walked out. He said nothing. The system already knew it had failed. Within hours, Marcus contacted a civil rights attorney. By Monday morning, a federal lawsuit was drafted, 46 pages outlining Fourth Amendment violations, unlawful detention, false arrest, and racial profiling. The video spread fast. 10,000 views became 1 million. National outlets picked it up. Comment sections exploded. Internal Affairs launched a 6-week investigation. They reviewed dispatch audio, Bodycam footage, and Kowalski's prior stops. The numbers told a story. Black individuals were stopped at nearly 3 times the rate of others under similar circumstances. Findings were damning. Policy violations, training failures, pattern behavior. There was no defending it. Officer Daniel Kowalski was terminated for conduct unbecoming, violation of constitutional rights, and failure to de-escalate. His appeal failed. The DOJ opened a broader inquiry. A 92-page report followed, mandating body cam reforms, bias retraining, and supervisory oversight. The city settled for $4.5 million. Marcus donated a portion to legal advocacy groups. This wasn't about me, he said. It was about changing what happens next time. Kowalski never worked in law enforcement again. Marcus returned to duty wiser, but resolute. This story matters because Marcus Reed had every advantage: credentials, knowledge, resources, a camera, and still this happened. Imagine those without any of that. Accountability arrived here, but it often doesn't. So tell me, what's your biggest takeaway? Was $4.5 million enough? Share this story, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below, because these stories don't end unless we keep watching. See you in the next one.